Hello everybody, how you doing? Welcome to another video. Today we're talking about the AI foundations in local government, and in this video we're covering process optimization. So let's jump in. So what we're going to cover in this video is the difference between AI for personal productivity, process optimization, strategic change. If you haven't seen any of our other videos, we're just going to whiz through that. Why use AI in team processes as a tool? We're going to cover off that topic. And what does an AI optimized process look like? So we're going to do all of those things, as well as helping you identify where AI is indeed appropriate and relevant to be applied. So let's jump straight in. So when we think about AI applications, we want to differentiate. Today we're looking at process optimization AI, or in this video, but we also have personal productivity AI and strategic change AI. And the reason we differentiate between the three is, of course, because they do different things, they come with different risks, and there's potentially different technologies in there as well. In terms of strengths and limitations, we're going to jump straight to the middle section around process optimization. Really good at data analysis, streamlining workflows, and enforcing consistency and compliance. Struggles a bit with poor data. That original acronym of you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. Unpredictable human processes, one of the biggest problems that we're finding in process optimization, and informal collaboration. So the things that humans do really well, that's a bit where it struggles. When we think about risks around process optimization, again, when we go through this, we need to consider these things. So it's not necessarily an untrue truths discussion on the process optimization, but ethical decisions about where we really want to apply this sort of stuff and where we don't is a big factor. How does the process really work is the most challenging bit that we're finding at the moment, is that people don't really understand the nuances of how their processes work. And therefore, when we think about the implications of it going wrong, they're not overly clear on what that looks like, because they don't understand how that process works. So that's a really key part that we need to cover off. Again, remember that your data needs to stay in Australia if it's to do with citizens, so you need tools that manage it in that particular way. And managing your LGA's reputation around process optimization, especially if you're engaging citizens or others, is really, really key, right? There's some major wins to be had, but you need to manage those things. And again, that's a brand perspective, this time more from the LGAi and your team's perspective than it is anything else. So what does a productive and customer-centric LGAi look like when we think about it from each team perspective, right? And where AI can play a role? Well, we've just picked a few teams here, but if you think about it from a planning and development perspective, rapid what-if analysis. So imagine being able to determine or do scenario modeling on a whole range of things really, really fast. The second is, we're all in a housing crisis at the moment. Imagine if you could check plans as they came in as applications for additions to houses, shipping containers, for a whole range of other things, and just automate the responses to those when people don't provide the rest of the information. It's a really good problem solver in that regard. Automated engagement tools are the ability to engage citizens where they are when they want to be engaged. That's a really powerful aspect as well. From a finance perspective, an area which is really, really rife for the support of AI, we've got the ability to automatically chase debts. We've got the ability to automatically process invoices in the accounts payable perspective. We've got error detection and regular payments, so you can look for fraud protection. We can do auditing nearly all the time, right? So consistently all the way through. And we can summarize very large financial data sets really, really fast. From a community engagement perspective, we're able to engage larger audiences in real time and analyze that data in almost real time, right? And that's a real win, I think, for community engagement, to be able to leverage those tools to really, really change the way in which community engagement is done, because historically it's limited by the team's ability to process that information, pay for a team to process the information, and therefore that determines how much information, how you capture it. So there's a few wins in there. From an environment perspective, and including environmental safety, we've got the ability to track the changes over time with things such as aerial footage, and use AI to determine where the changes are, create really engaging campaigns about what is environmental safety, for example, why would you invest in protecting the environment, and being able to collect and track data from anywhere. So IoT and Internet of Things has been a thing for a long time now, but the AI we have now has the ability to interpret that data really, really fast, and turn it into human language that everybody can understand. From a more corporate services perspective, AI-led cyber protection is a massive win in the AI space. But one of the things that we see real value in is self-service IT on steroids. So the ability for AI to essentially help you resolve your problem, not just to be able to triage it or anything like that. And truly proactive engagement. So the IT team are there to help you and check that you're okay and support you in any other problems, as opposed to just deal with your woes and problems. From a policy and governance perspective, we can go from checking governance and policy from governance from a quarterly thing to tracking it completely ongoing, right? Which is an amazing aspect and value add, right? We're able to create policies in hours and minutes rather than in weeks and months, right? So we can go through the process of approval much quicker. And we're able to understand the impact of changes from a federal and state standpoint on our own LGA much quicker. So those things all really add value to your teams and how you operate. Conversations. Here's a few ways that we're seeing LGAs identifying the use cases for AI. We've got the idea of standardizing customer services responses, preparing for meetings, out of hours support, paper preparation, so if you're preparing a policy paper or anything like that. Centralizing and sharing knowledge should be a very obvious one there. Understanding and allocating inbound emails, triaging planning applications, searching for and categorizing files. So if you're doing a lot of records management work on historic data, for example, debt chasing we mentioned, policy comparison and updating, financial analysis, automating onboarding and offboarding. That one's an IT sort of aspect, but could be broader in the HR world as well. Increasing website and intranet value through constant analysis and checking for example, broken links. Describing the role of a team, so being able to communicate what you do in a much more effective way to drive value for those who engage with you. Response drafting and community engagement and analysis, right? So a number of those we've touched on. There's a full use case set on our website. Please go to www.component6.com/local-government and you'll see the use cases on there as well. We'll continue to add to those as we find more. So where should you consider using AI when it comes to process optimization? Well, you should choose that based on clarifying your objective. You need to identify if AI will be used for a specific task. So it could be a one-off as part of a project, could be for ongoing operations, or perhaps you're just trying to do a specific thing over and over again, right? You need to understand that objective and be very clear, but you don't need to get lost in the idea of every AI solution or every AI engagement needs to be an ongoing aspect. Then with that, you then need to define the AI role. So we typically don't see AI dealing with a whole process a lot of the time. We see it dealing with tasks within a process. So you really need to identify where AI is going to play a role and where it sits alongside the human engagement. Then set success criteria. So determine what the measurable outcomes are and how you're going to measure that success as you go through. And this will allow you to conduct these exercises and really understand where the value lies. And a great way of doing this is by understanding what's happened in the last 12 months and how you would get benefits in the last 12 months if you'd have had the AI doing the specific role that you've defined for the objective you've defined. So when we think about all of these things, how you can move forward is that you can assess your current process as it stands now, try and really understand how it works end to end, where it has variations, what you need to do in those particular aspects, and identify what would create significant improvements and efficiencies. Now, please bear in mind that when you look at process optimization, quite typically what happens is you'll work your way along the process, find a bottleneck, resolve that bottleneck, and it creates a bottleneck further down the process. So actually end to end, the process doesn't always benefit from fixing the first thing, but it might do if you fix the second and third thing. So you need patience, you need to understand what that looks like. And one of the ways you can do that is by defining success and mitigating the risks. So we need you to still understand and think about those risk factors. If you're putting AI into a process, how are you using AI? What's the data that's going into that AI? Which tool are you using that's relevant for those sorts of things? And then you can choose whether there's a value proposition to be had. And then try those targeted AI implementations. Now it takes hours and days to create these initial things now. So it's not a matter of having to wait weeks for these things. It's a matter of trialing these things and really giving it a go. And that will allow you to decide whether you want to go with that ongoing. Okay, well, that's all from me again. So thank you for watching this video. Please click on the like, subscribe with us, and follow along and watch some of our others.